My name is Janae Pierre, and I am the Social Action Chair of the Houston Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, and I'm so happy to open this program, so give yourselves a hand. I'm going to ask if we could progress to the next slide. If for whatever reason we did not capture your registration coming in, which means you got past us and you don't have a wristband on, if you could please scan this QR code really quickly so that we can capture your information. We would really appreciate it. So we'll just give a couple of seconds for you to scan that if you do not have a wristband on. Thank you. And as we progress to the next slide, I'd like to go over the agenda very quickly. You are hearing from myself, Janae Pierre, and then I will have the pleasure of bringing on Dr. Anitra Piper. Then we will have a safety briefing by Paulette Caston, and then we will have a prayer and introduction of our moderators. So we should be looking at the agenda on our slides. Thank you. Then we will have a prayer and introduction of our moderator by Dr. Angela Raven Anderson. And then our moderator, Reverend Dr. Marcus D. Cosby, the senior pastor of Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, will then introduce all of our candidates. Our candidates will then come out onto the stage and we will begin the questioning and discussion. We will close the forum with closing statements, and then you will hear from myself and Dr. Angela again. At this time, if you are an elected official, can you please stand? We'd like to thank you for joining us this evening, all elected officials, if you can please stand. Thank you so much for being here. And I'd also like to thank our partners, obviously the Houston Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, collaborating with Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, and also our partners with the Houston Area Urban League Young Professionals and Houston Voting Initiative. If you could please give them a round of applause. And the last thing that I will task you with is we are streaming live on the Facebook pages of the Houston Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta and also Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church. So this is the one time I'm going to ask you to text your friends and tell them to join us online on Facebook. So if they were not able to join us today, or if they're getting ready for homecoming, they'll have the opportunity to view this very important program online. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and pleasure to bring up the president of the Houston Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, Dr. Anitra Piper.
Good evening. I am Dr. Anitra Piper, president of the Houston Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Welcome to Crucial Conversations on the Road to the Midterms. We are so glad you're here. We thank Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church for their partnership in this endeavor, and we want you to know it is extremely important for you to hear from the candidates to know where they stand on issues that are important to us, because we vote for those who have our best interests at heart. Thank you for coming and enjoy the event. We will now bring forth our emergency response co-chair. I almost said Sarah, but Paulette Caston, to bring us our emergency response message.
Good evening. My name is Paulette Caston, and I'm the co-chair of the emergency response team of the Houston Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. It is my privilege to share a few safety reminders with you this evening. In the event of an emergency, it is important to remain calm and follow the instructions of the leaders of this evening's meeting. Please take a moment to note the safety exits to the room. The main sanctuary doors at the rear of the room, leading to the main lobby. Side exits located on both the left and right sides of the sanctuary. In the event of an emergency, proceed calmly to the nearest exit. The fire extinguishers are located near each exit door of the sanctuary. If there is an emergency, dial 911 and provide the name and location of the church: Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, 3826 Wheeler Avenue, Houston, Texas 77004. There is a first aid kit and an AED located outside the sanctuary near the elevator between the board and electrical rooms. If there is anyone in the building who's CPR certified, you will be asked to assist with CPR if needed, so please be prepared. Let's remember to practice situational awareness by being alert and reporting any situation that may present itself as a threat to the safety of anyone, including yourself. Lastly, continue to be alert to the risk of COVID and flu. Remember to take necessary precautions. Thank you for your attention. At this time, Dr. Angela Raven Anderson will come forth. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am Reverend Dr. Angela Raven Anderson, and I have the privilege of serving as the leader of our social justice ministry here at Wheeler Avenue. And on behalf of our senior pastor, Dr. Marcus D. Cosby, our executive pastor, Reverend Alexander E.M. Johnson, I want to say welcome to each and every one of you back to the campus of Wheeler Avenue for our third Candidates Forum. We are so delighted that you are here to join with us tonight in our in our crucial conversations, the road to the midterms. We are so grateful that you have taken time to be here tonight. We gather not only as voters, but as neighbors, as believers, and as partners in the ongoing work of justice. This is more than a political moment. This is a sacred moment, a moment where faith meets action, where community meets conviction, and where hope meets responsibility. Tonight, we come to listen, to learn, and to lean in to conversations that matter. Because what happens in this district, in our neighborhoods, our schools, our streets, deeply matters to all of us. And as people of faith, we believe our civic duty is part of our spiritual calling to seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. So again, thank you all for showing up. Thank you for caring, and thank you for being a part of the movement that keeps our community strong, engaged, and full of purpose. So let us now pray. Gracious and eternal God, we pause tonight, first of all, just to say thank you. Thank you, God, for this day and for this gathering of hearts and minds who care about the welfare of your people. Lord, we invite your presence into this space. We ask that you bless this forum, bless each candidate who will speak and each voter who will listen. Grant them all wisdom, clarity, and courage. Help us to remember, oh God, that leadership is service, and service is love in action. May our conversations tonight be seasoned with grace and guided by truth and anchored in justice. Remind us that our voices have power and that when we speak with integrity and act with compassion, change can truly happen. Now, Lord, let your spirit rest upon this place. Let understanding rise, let unity grow, and let everything we do bring glory to your name. And it is in the mighty, matchless name of Jesus we pray. Amen. It is my great honor and joy to introduce you all to our moderator this evening, a man whose leadership, preaching, and prophetic voice have touched not only this congregation, but the city, the nation, and indeed the world. The Reverend Dr. Marcus D. Cosby serves as the senior pastor of Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, succeeding our founding pastor, the Reverend Dr. William Alexander Lawson, and he is continuing a legacy of faith, scholarship, and social justice. A proud native of Chicago, Dr. Cosby is a gifted preacher, teacher, and a visionary leader who has guided this ministry with wisdom, compassion, and courage for over 2 decades. Under his leadership, Wheeler Avenue has continued to be a light in this community, building faith, transforming lives, and speaking truth to power. He is a devoted husband, father, and grandfather, and a faithful servant of God whose passion for preaching and God's people is evident in everything he does. Family, friends, and neighbors, please join me in welcoming our moderator this evening, the Reverend Dr. Marcus D. Cosby.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson, and good evening to you all. It is certainly good to see you here, and we're grateful that you would come to Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church this Thursday evening for this evening's forum. We're grateful that those who are candidates for CD18 have come to be with us today, and they are ready to respond to the questions that will be presented to them, and they will give to us a piece of their platform as to how they plan to lead Congressional District 18 to an even greater place. I am grateful for their being here, and I'm looking forward to all that they will share with us tonight. The forum provides voters with a clear and direct opportunity to hear from the candidates tonight who are seeking to represent one of the most historic and dynamic districts in this country. And as we engage in this crucial conversation tonight, our theme is twofold. Part one, we're addressing the issues, focusing on immediate district-level concerns. And then part two is the road to the midterms, exploring broader vision and leadership priorities. So this is how the evening will flow. I'm going to ask that everyone will put their phones on vibrate. Let's start there. And to ensure fairness, we'll ask the candidates to share their platforms, and each of them has drawn numbers backstage before we began to determine the order in which they will receive their individual questions. During both segments of the forum, each candidate will respond to a shared question and then to an individual question assigned based on the randomized order. Each candidate will have approximately 1 to 2 minutes per response. And we ask that you please hold your applause until the end of each segment to help us stay on time. We're delighted to have these 7 candidates joining us this evening. They have accepted our invitation to participate in this forum. And I will now invite them to come to the stage and take their places, beginning with Mr. George Foreman IV. We can applaud him as he comes out. Yeah. George was raised in Humble, Texas, in a family grounded in perseverance, faith, and service. He has dedicated his life to helping others, not because of his last name, but because of his values. A former HISD teacher and community advocate, he has worked with organizations like the NAACP and the National Job Corps to expand opportunity, empower youth, and strengthen Houston's neighborhoods through leadership that listens, responds, and shows up. Welcome, George Foreman IV. We're glad that you are here. Stephen Huey comes next, and we're grateful for his presence. With over 20 years of experience in technology across energy, finance, and healthcare, Rice University alumnus Stephen Huey co-founded a successful financial software startup and now leads the consulting firm High Emprise. Now he's ready to bring his extensive industry expertise, proven ability to collaborate and build coalitions, and faith-driven values to fight corruption, protect the vulnerable, and deliver practical economic solutions that strengthen our community and improve everyday life for all Texans. Thank you, Brother Huey. We are glad that you are here. Third, Mr. Christian Menifee comes to share with us today. Christian is a Houston native, raised in Texas's 18th Congressional District by two military parents. He became the first in his family to graduate from college and went on to make history as the youngest and first black Harris County attorney. He's taken on Trump, Abbott, and corporate polluters and won, protecting voting rights, reproductive freedom, and clean air and water for Texans. Now, Christian is running for Congress to fight for working families and ensure government stands with the people, not the powerful. Thank you, Mr. Christian Menifee, for your presence with us this evening. Carmen Maria Montiel. Carmen is a proud conservative and Venezuelan American. From building a family-owned medical practice in Houston to advocating for abuse survivors and giving a voice to underserved communities through journalism, Carmen is ready to bring her real-world experience and conservative values to Texas's 18th Congressional District, fighting for secure borders, safe communities, and opportunities that uphold the American dream, and to flip this district red. Now we ask Yolanda Jones to come forward. Republicans may have broken our government, she says, but they can't break Yolanda Jones. Rising from poverty to the Academic All-American Hall of Fame, Yolanda built a career as an attorney, reforming the criminal justice system, and served her community as a city council member, school board member, and now as state representative for Texas House District 147. Authentic, unafraid, and relentless, she fights every day for affordable health care, quality schools, safer communities, and to defend our democracy from Donald Trump and MAGA extremism. Thank you, Ms. Yolanda Jones. Amanda K. Edwards comes now, and we are grateful to welcome her as well. Amanda is an attorney, nonprofit leader, and former Houston City Council member at large position 4, dedicated to empowering communities through innovative solutions, civic engagement, and public service. She is the founder of the community-based solutions firm, board president of Be the Solution community empowerment organization, and has led major initiatives such as the city's Technology and Innovation Task Force and the Business Ecosystem Alliance to expand access to capital for women and minority-owned businesses. Amanda Edwards is dedicated to building a community where everyone can thrive. We welcome Amanda Edwards. And now finally, Mr. Isaiah Martin. Isaiah is a Houston-born leader who rose to prominence at the University of Houston for the students, for founding for the students, to expand campus voting access and address food insecurity and sexual assault support. Mentored by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, he learned that true leadership means action and perseverance in the fight for justice. Now, Isaiah is ready to bring that same passion to Congress, championing everyday Texans, standing up to MAGA extremism, and delivering bold, effective leadership for Houston's future. Will you again welcome Mr. Martin as he comes to share with us this afternoon, and all of our candidates who are here to participate in tonight's forum. We've gone through some significant ground rules, and we've informed all of the candidates of the way that we will be governed this evening. And so I begin with a focus on the urgent issues facing District 18, from health care to housing. We'll begin with a shared question that all the candidates will answer. They will answer it in the order in which they are standing here, beginning with Mr. Foreman, and then we'll follow with some randomly individualized questions. First question, you'll have 2 minutes to respond. Of course, this seat has been vacated since Representative Turner's death, and with district offices operated under House Clerk oversight. What will you prioritize in your first 100 days to address the needs of the district so your constituents feel both heard and represented?
And first and foremost, I want to thank this magical sorority. My sister is a Delta, so I know the passion for community, the passion for service that comes from this environment. I grew up and I would work with Rep. Jackson Lee or Rep. Turner to try to make sure we, from the nonprofit standpoint, got the best services that the community needed to the forefront. So that means when there's a storm, it was a nonprofit community. It was the people who stepped up and picked up the trees, picked up the trash, helped people get pipes when the pipes bursted during the freezes. It was the power of the people that got this district through. So what led me to run was to bring the support to those who have carried on the fight, even when sometimes our elected officials couldn't help us at that moment. When we're waiting on FEMA and we're waiting on funding, we're waiting on help from the state, but it was the people, the nonprofits, the city services, the police officers who would step up and solve the problem. So my first duty would be to make sure that we're supporting the infrastructure that has supported our district, even when state and local leadership was waiting on funding or playing the waiting game like they should, like government does sometimes. So infrastructure to make sure that when it floods, when our grid goes down, when the storms come, that we're getting things back on track as quickly as possible. There's also a jobs element to infrastructure to make sure we have the workforce to solve the problems that come up when the storms come. So making sure we have a skilled workforce and the infrastructure to support and sustain us through storms these are our top priorities for the district, and this is what I'll be working on when I get to Congress.
Thank you so much. Mr. Huey.
I'm very happy to be here. The priority I would choose, because there are many pressing issues, it hasn't changed in many, many months now. And I'm encouraged that there's some work right now. Some people are talking about reversing some terrible cuts to our district. The healthcare cuts, food assistance cuts, these kinds of things are reckless and cruel. I have had many arguments with people who, I understand their concerns, where they're coming from, all the money in the federal government, and they feel like maybe there's some fraud here and there, and we got to cut that down. But I'm a data-driven person. In my entire career, I've had to make data-driven decisions. We have the technology to kind of drill down and identify things like that. That should not be the concern. We should actually make sure that if we're going to do anything like that, it needs to be a long-term strategic plan. And it's extremely reckless to risk the health of so many people. In our system, in our justice system, you're innocent until proven guilty. Not all countries have that. It's a privilege to have that here. And in the same way with other things, benefits that people in need, we should consider them innocent until proven guilty. And so I've had some terrible arguments with people. I try to be respectful of their position, but it's just a very urgent need. And so I've been encouraged recently in the last few months, even though in the spring some Republicans were saying they were not going to fall in line, they were not going to give in, and then one by one they fell. That was extremely discouraging. But lately, some of them are realizing that their own district that may have Trump supporters are going to be negatively impacted by these. So it's encouraging to think that in the first 100 days, if I and others are joining together, we can make a push for this. We can reverse course before it's too late. It's very important for the health and safety of many people in our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Menifee.
Good evening. I'm Christian Menifee, and I'm running for Congress because it was a thoughtful, a compassionate, a helpful government that gave me my first shot at the American dream. When I was growing up, there were many nights I would not have eaten were it not for the WIC program. Many days I would have been at school on an empty stomach were it not for free lunch in our public schools. My parents would have never purchased their first home were it not for VA down payment assistance that let them put $500 down when I was in high school and buy their first home. I'd have never been the first in my family to go to college and pledge Omega Psi Phi were it not for a Pell Grant. And my brother almost certainly would have died from cancer were it not for my parents' military health benefits that fully funded his bone marrow transplant. And he's been in remission for more than 20 years. At every single step, And that's how you take a family that has sent more people to prison than to college to me being the youngest person and the first African-American elected Harris County attorney. And in that job, when I look up at Washington, D.C. right now and I say we have a president that's cutting SNAP benefits, we have a president that's cutting Pell Grants, we have a president that's deporting U.S. citizens, a president that's laying off hundreds of thousands of federal workers. I couldn't sit idly by while this president and the Republican majority in Congress tries to dismantle our democracy. As the county attorney, I've had one simple rule. I don't care if you're in the governor's mansion, if you're in a corporate boardroom, or if you're in the White House. If you come after the communities that I love, I will see you. And every single day in this job, we have stood up to the powerful. We have sued Greg Abbott. We have sued Ken Paxton. We have sued Donald Trump, and we have beat them to restore health care programs, to protect our voting rights, to ensure that every single vote is counted in our elections. So in my first 100 days in Congress, I'm going to be on the exact type of time, doing every single thing I can to protect the communities that I care about, making sure that we have sidewalks in every last one of our communities, that we're bringing in flood and infrastructure dollars to ensure that we are mitigating against the impacts of flooding, and making sure that everybody in this country has access to health care like my brother did, because I don't believe that any person in our country should have to choose between life-saving treatment and putting food on the table. I'm Christian Menifee, and I look forward to the conversation tonight.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Montiel.
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure for me to be here today. I am a legal immigrant. I came as a student to United States, and while I was here, Venezuela, the country I was born, started to go to the left. And as it went to the left, my possibility to return to my country of birth when I have promise of jobs, much better jobs than the one I had, failed. So for years, I've been seeing how this country is moving to the left because I see the same signs, and that's what I decided to run for office. I'm not a politician. I'm a businesswoman, former journalist, and I already have bills in place to act in the first 100 days. I have a bill ready to audit the billions of federal money that had been allocated for the city of Houston and Harris County that nobody knows where it is, and it can solve the infrastructure problem, the drainage problem that is flooding our cities, and the housing problems, is especially to help Title I people. Also, we need to use opportunity zones that will bring investors, and investors bring jobs, jobs bring more housing, improved education. I have another bill ready to introduce that is called HEMRA, which is Houston Electrical Infrastructure Modernization and Resilience Act. We need to improve our electricity. It has become a custom that whatever rain happen or flood or freezing, the whole city of Houston paralyzed because of the electrical infrastructure. We need to fix that because in the meantime, we have problems with the hospitals and people die. We have problems with our elderly, and we have problems with very poor people that lose the whole food that is in the refrigerator. So I have 3 bills ready to get to action as soon as I get to Congress in the first 100 days as your Congresswoman. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Jones, it's on. It's ready.
Oh, okay. My name is Jolanda Jones, and I'm the state representative for House District 145. I don't just talk about these issues that I will work on in the first 100 days. I've lived them. When my father took his life after the VA failed him, that made me determined to make sure the Department of Veterans Affairs is adequately funded and held accountable so no veteran or their families are left behind. When my grandmother lost her leg to diabetes and then died because she had inadequate health care, that made me determined to fight to strengthen the federal health care programs that so many of my loved ones have not had. I got my vaccinations, I got my eyes checked, I got my teeth cleaned at the City of Houston health clinics funded with federal dollars. That's why I'll fight to make sure that community health clinics are fully funded and accessible to everyone because they save lives. When my friend's son and daughter-in-law had a child who was a victim of Texas's archaic abortion laws now, no family should have to go through that kind of trauma and emotional distress that they've had to go through because a government is intruding in their lives. When I fled this state running from the FBI and the Texas Rangers to fight for voting rights, we shouldn't have to do that. We should not be taken back to pre-Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights Act. So my first 100 days, I will hold town halls, first of all, to speak with my constituents so that they can tell me exactly what they want to work on. But I tell you what, I will absolutely go after Trump. I will use my 30 years of trial experience. First of all, I will vote no on all his stuff. I will investigate the hell out of him, and I will vote to impeach him because he is underfunding all of the agencies that provide the services that we paid our taxes for. So I hope to increase health care. I hope to get people back on SNAP. I hope to fully fund public education. And I look forward to this discussion so that I can talk more fully about the plans I have to implement within the first 100 days. My name is Jolanda Jones.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Edwards.
When I was about 10 years old, my father was diagnosed with something called multiple myeloma, and he died from it when I was a teen. But I'll never forget asking my father, what would happen if the insurance company, what if they said no to the life-saving treatments that he needed? And I'll never forget his answers. He would always just look at me and say, well, we would just have to figure something else out. And I knew then, just like I know today, that was the wrong answer. And we have to create systems that work for people and help save lives rather than to leave them to their own devices. And so that is what you will be sending me to Washington to do, is bring about systems change. Systems change when it comes to access to affordable health care. Systems change when it comes to preventing our community from losing lives and dollars behind the rampant flooding that happens here. You see, when I was on city council, something called Harvey hit, and I'll never forget those 51 inches of rainfall, but the devastation that was caused could be prevented. Now, we're not in a position to stop it from raining, but as government, we are in a position to to be able to catch it when it does. And that means we have to start investing in our infrastructure like nobody's business on day one. This district has gone, if you count the time when Congresswoman Jackson Lee passed away and Congressman Turner passing away, the delay in the special election, the runoff that will likely ensue, we're talking about a period of 18 months that this 18th congressional district hasn't had its voice, hasn't had its vote, and hasn't had its federal advocate for funding. I am the only person in this race whose professional background it has been to bring public dollars to public projects. And so I will be ready on day one to work across the aisle to bring infrastructure dollars to our region. In addition, the overhaul that is needed with regard to FEMA, disaster recovery, will also be on my agenda for the first 100 days, because that is going to save lives versus leave them to their own devices.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Martin.
Well, good evening, Wheeler Avenue. I'm happy to be here. I'm Isaiah Martin, and I'm running for Congress because, quite frankly, we got a stupid person in the White House, and we got to do something to stand up to him. We got to be honest. But in honesty, I spent 4 years with Congresswoman Jackson Lee as her senior advisor. And with that experience, it really taught me about what you're going to be able to do in this position with a stupid person in the White House, with a Republican Senate and a Republican House. We got to be very realistic. In the first 100 days, I'm immediately going to get to work to open up district offices in every single quadrant of the district. Why is that important? So many people have not been able to go get their casework done in the amount of time that we have. We have to make sure that we get people on the ground. In addition to that, I'm immediately going to get to work to assemble meetings to talk about community grant funding requests that have not been able to go through. Why? We have not had a member of Congress in this position for a long time. That means that we've missed out on so many different earmark opportunities. And if it's anything like the way the Republicans have delayed Adelita Grijalva from being sworn in to the United States Congress, I'm going to work as a congressman-elect to get people assembled so we can go into to Washington on day one with actual real appropriations that we want to get. In addition to that, I will co-sponsor legislation like the Jobs Act from Senator Tim Kaine to effectively ensure that we can use Pell Grants not just for colleges and universities, but also for those that want job trainings as well. Why is that important? Houston is seeing one of the largest cuts to jobs that we've seen out of anywhere else in the country. 20,000 people just lost their jobs at Chevron. I immediately want to get to work to get this legislation started so people can go and get the trainings they need to move forward. In addition to that, I want to serve on the Oversight Committee because the I in Isaiah Martin stands for investigating the living daylights out of Donald J. Trump. I want to go after every single stream of money that they're stealing from our communities, and I will be relentless in doing so. I'm looking forward to the conversation later here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Thank you. Thanks to each of you for your response regarding your first 100 days. Now, each of you gets your own question, and we ask that you will limit your response to 2 minutes to this question as well. First, Mr. Foreman. District 18 is home to the Texas Medical Center, and in this section, we'll talk a little bit about health care and public health. Of course, the Texas Medical Center is the largest in the world, yet many residents lack affordable health care and suffer disproportionately from chronic conditions. How will you ensure that residents in underserved areas of the district have equitable access to affordable health care, preventive services, and mental health resources?
There's a powerful word that was in that question, equitable access. I think that's such a huge detail, so I'm going to start with that. When someone walks into a doctor's office, they want care. They don't want to be asked too many questions other than the questions that lead to their quality of care. So making sure that we have the best skilled the people who are radiologists looking at your body, the best nurses, the best trade skill workers that lead you to the best quality of care when you walk into the doctor's office, that's an education conversation. So making sure that the federal government sends the money, as we say, bring home the bacon to make sure that our programs are well funded, that our students are coming out of our nursing programs, our high schools, our trade schools are ready to get in and solve the problems of tomorrow. That's our top priority. Now, in order to do that, there's going to be a lot of bipartisan work that needs to be done. As we've heard today, there's a lot of Republican House, Republican Senate, even the Supreme Court seems to be heavy leaning. So we need the best diplomats who understand the healthcare administration process to go in and bring the resources back home. So sending people that are going to go and throw stones at leadership is probably a great way to make sure that the best quality of care doesn't come back from Washington, D.C. So I'm going to make deals. It's my job to make sure that I get to the Oval Office to bring the bacon home. My dad had an idea called the shotgun strategy. When it's time to bring home the food, you don't just go out with a straight shooter, because if you miss, you bring nothing back home. You got to go out and scatter the field and make sure you bring wins home. And that's what I'm devoted to, making sure our district wins in the healthcare space.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Additionally, Mr. Huey, will you please respond with regards to healthcare and public health to the following? The CDC's 2023 data shows that non-Hispanic Black women experienced a maternal mortality rate of 50.3 deaths per 100,000 live births, which is more than 3 times the rate for non-Hispanic white women. In Congressional District 18, what specific policy proposals or investments would you advocate to reduce this racial disparity in maternal health, especially for Black mothers, and ensure equitable access to high-quality prenatal, perinatal, and postpartum care in our district?
Thank you. Care for mothers and children is very near and dear to my heart because my wife and I have 4 children. You know, he mentioned equity and access to care. One of my good friends was an Hispanic pediatric cardiologist here at Texas Children for 17 years. She and her family just moved to Colorado. She'd already kind of had it with Abbott last year, but she was still in her job. However, she also has a master's in public health and was the first Baylor grant to be cut by the federal government in the spring because it was about equity and access to care. And I already said previously, a lot of this is reckless and cruel, and it's not really done with any kind of strategic plan, and I feel like there's a lot of misinformation in our country. I feel like more than anyone up here, I see both sides on social media a lot. For 20 years, I've argued with people. I was arguing with a friend. His wife was working for a Republican congressman when Obamacare was being debated. I was trying to spell it out for them and explain it to them, okay? So, you know, I met James Tallarico in July. He had just gone on Joe Rogan. He goes on Fox News and tries to speak to other Americans who may not understand the actual stories and the reasons why we have to have these, you know, why equity to access to care is not unfair. It's, we have to have a better way of communicating to win people to our side, to ensure that we can get that done here. This is the fourth largest city in the country. It's one of the largest medical centers in the world, at times the largest. We shouldn't be having this problem in our city. We should have the best care for all mothers in our city, not just the ones who are privileged and have the most access to care. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Menifee, let's move on now to economic development and jobs. The median household income in CD 18 is about $66,803. What policies would you prioritize to boost economic mobility, especially for lower income and minority communities in this district?
There used to be a time in this country where you could work 40 hours a week, you could get the house, the 2 cars, send your kids off to do better than you did, and retire at a reasonable age. But right now, for so many Americans, that's just not the case. Folks are working multiple jobs, they don't have any money in savings, they don't even have enough money left over to have a good time on the weekend. At the same time, we're pushing more and more of our kids to go to college and many times get degrees that don't ultimately help them earn. I remember my father telling me, you don't have to go to college, but you got to get up out of here. There's so many kids who we're sending off to college to get a general studies degree who aren't able to leverage that to be able to get good paying jobs when they get out. So I want to do a few things. One, I want to boost the number of apprenticeship programs in our district. We did that at the county. We took federal dollars and created an apprenticeship program in the public transportation and the construction and the entertainment spaces, got young folks good jobs and training that would build them up so that 10 to 15 years from now, they can be making $150,000, $200,000 and be able to take care of their family. I also want to make sure that when we bring federal dollars down, that we have local hiring requirements. It makes no sense for Houston to get $500 million for a project and the companies that we're hiring are coming from Alaska and Maine. Those should be Houston area companies that are hiring Houstonians to ensure that they're able to make ends meet. But I also want to ensure that we are sending more folks to college for free. Right now, college is wholly unaffordable. When I got out of law school, I had $200,000 in debt. I did not have $200,000 worth of education. I believe we need to expand our Pell Grants. We need to expand the amount of federal funding that we're using to send folks to graduate school and really invest in our future in a meaningful way. But we don't get there without having strong unions. My grandfather was a longshoreman right there at the Port of Houston, passed away on the job, and it was the union that came together that helped take care of his family. And I will tell you, alone in the workplace, you have no power, but collectively, there is real power to ensure that you're properly compensated.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Montiel, while parts of the district are thriving, others face persistent unemployment, underemployment, and limited access to capital for small businesses. What is your plan to spur equitable economic growth and bring quality jobs, job training, and small business investment to economically distressed neighborhoods in this district?
Sadly, Houston just became the poorest city in the nation, and that mostly affects District 18. I'm a big proponent to bring back trade education to our high schools so our children can graduate already with a trade, especially in an area where we have the industrial area so close to the east side of the district. As I said before, we have opportunity zones that are in place to bring investors, and that's another source to create jobs. As I said, investors, yeah, they get benefit, it's lower taxes, but that will bring money to the city, will create jobs to the city, as a result, as I said before, housing and better education. I believe we also need to invest in trade education for adults, as I believe we need to also solve the problem of our homeless with the so many empty buildings and warehouses we have in the district. We can refurbish them, bring them housing, provide them with trade education so they can join the workforce again. One of the things the tariff is doing is forcing jobs back into United States of America. And we need to keep on doing that because the world is getting rich on our children's back. When I came here in 1988, the young people of Venezuela were not able to afford a home when they got married. That's exactly the situation we're living in United States right now. And that's what I'm telling you. I see we're heading in the same path, and we need to take action. Sometimes the actions are not the most sympathetic for so many people, but we need to have a strong hand to provide a future for our next generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jones, let's move now to talk a bit about housing, gentrification, and infrastructure. Communities like 3rd Ward and 5th Ward face rapid gentrification, rising property taxes, and displacement of longtime residents. How will you balance economic growth with affordable housing protections so that families who built these communities are not priced out of them?
I live in 3rd Ward. I represent a whole bunch of places where gentrification is real. The first thing that I would do is I would work with the city to provide infrastructure in these neighborhoods that they've historically destroyed. As I was on the city council, I was chair of the Housing and Community Development Committee. What I did when I was there was I made sure that HOPWA funding, CDBG funding was brought into impoverished areas so that they could provide affordable housing for people who are unhoused. So I work with St. John's downtown. They have one of the best homelessness outreach of anywhere, and made sure they had grants to do little things like buy washing machines so people who are unhoused could wash their clothes, and have job training so they could go get jobs. I also provided HOPWA funding, which is housing opportunities for people with AIDS, so that people who are sick have all the services they need within those housing opportunities. On city council, I amended chapter 42. And what that did was it stopped the building of McMansions if people on the street did deed restrictions or minimum lot size and setbacks so that people could not come and change the character of their neighborhoods. I fought developers to make them have to put detention and retention on their property. And I also put in chapter 42 where they had to have sufficient on-site parking so that they don't bring our neighborhoods down. And finally, as a state representative, I voted for property tax relief so that we get credits towards our property taxes so we don't pay as much. So again, in our neighborhoods, they're under attack, and I want to make sure that we can afford our taxes, and we can afford to rent as well, because not everybody is a homeowner.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Edwards, the district includes parts of Houston and unincorporated areas. Transit, infrastructure, and housing quality vary greatly. What federal investments or policies would you support to improve public transit, roads, broadband, and affordable housing in District 18?
When I served on Houston City Council, I happened to be the appointee to the Transportation Policy Council for HGAC, which is the entity charged with the responsibility of bringing federal dollars to our 8-county region for transportation. And doing that work, I led the High Capacity Transit Task Force because I knew that we had a crisis brewing on our hands. Imagine this, in the next 20 years, we are anticipating the growth of our 8-county region by increasing it by 4 million people. But yet, our infrastructure investment in preparing to prevent this crisis is insufficient. Once I become the member of Congress, not only would I serve on judiciary, but I also would serve on transportation and infrastructure and ensure that we begin to connect federal funding to transportation investment for a multimodal transit system that supports people who are using transit, who are dependent on transit, but also those who want to use it on an optional basis. Before I came back home to Houston, I used to live in Atlanta. I went to undergrad there, and they had something called MARTA. And MARTA was key to the success of them being able to successfully bid on the Olympics and being able to have major events continue to come to their city. It was game changing. Can you imagine if we had multimodal transit options that was grade separated, what that could do to enable people to bring people to work to and from where they need to go, from entertainment to work and the like? It also spurs growth overall in our economy. When businesses look at a place to locate, they're also looking at the question as to whether or not a city or a community is equipped to transport their workers to and from the workplace. We've got to start making the requisite investments before the crisis arises so that we can live up to our full potential as a community.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Martin, let me ask you a question then about immigration. Given that approximately 24% of CD18's population is foreign-born, what is your view on comprehensive immigration reform, border security, and how immigrants contribute to the district's economy?
Well, first off, one of the most important roles of a member of Congress is to clear up Republican misinformation. And when I hear the phrase that tariffs brought back record revenue into the United States to, quote unquote, bring jobs back, I would like to point out that the American unemployment rate is literally at its highest level since COVID-19. I would like to point out the fact that the black unemployment rate is the highest level since COVID-19 at almost 7.5%. I would like to point out that the Gen Z unemployment rate is one of the highest as well. Also, if you look at the district, those that actually graduate, literally less than 65% of the people that graduate from high school in the 18th congressional district go immediately to high school, to college, or to the military or full-time unemployment. So you don't know what you're talking about. In addition to that, when I hear the phrase that trades, maybe if the stupid Republicans didn't go get a surplus of more than $25 billion that they literally use to defund our neighborhoods in every single aspect that we have, maybe we would have trades inside of our school like we used to, because Republicans have been running things for 30 years. In addition to that, when I hear about immigration reform, I'm immediately going to co-sponsor the Dignity Act from Congresswoman Veronica Escobar. This is going to allow for so many of those that are immigrants in this country to get citizenship. In addition to that, I do not support the ridiculous ICE raids that they're using to abduct people's abuelas that are hardworking in this country, that have not committed a crime. I do not support such a thing. Because if you really want to be honest, all the money that they're using to terrorize our neighborhood could be used to put trades inside of our schools, to fully fund our neighborhoods, to make sure that our schools can adequately educate our children. That's the conversation that we should be having. So I'll be working to make sure that our immigrant communities are protected. I will be on the front lines, whether that's going in to do federal oversight myself over all these facilities that they have. I will be on the front lines, but I refuse to allow these Republicans to spread disinformation into our communities.
Thank you, sir. Thanks to each of you for your responses to these very significant questions with regard to the crucial conversations of our time. Let's take a break now. Let you refresh yourself, but we'll ask that everyone will stay seated for these next 3 minutes as we prepare for our next segment, which is the road to the midterms. So if you'll allow us, we have 3 minutes to these candidates to regroup, refresh, and then we'll begin our second portion of this evening's debate. Thank you so much. Jay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if we may have your attention, we'll be prepared now to begin the second half of tonight's crucial conversations. Thank you again, candidates, for your meaningful and thoughtful responses to each of the questions that have been presented to you. Now we move to randomly assigned questions, and you will have 2 minutes again. Well, let's do this first. Let's ask the same question of all of you, and then we'll move to some assigned questions thereafter. For this question, you have 1 minute to respond. And we begin to broaden our focus now on other issues that are pertaining to your leadership style and priorities heading into the midterms. Here's the question. Given the current partisan divide in Congress, how would you build coalitions or work across party lines to deliver results for your district? We'll start here with Mr. Foreman.
What's unique about me is my background specifically in public policy. I got to take the time, especially in Austin, to do the research, see what the people needed most, gather the data, and then bring it to lawmakers who would then rip it in half and run with the half they like most. And that was the most frustrating thing to me, where it was like, we did the research, we know what the people want, but somehow it becomes partisan when it's time to solve problems. So I bring that background to the forefront, to the issues, to make sure that we learn from others, from the associations, from the nonprofits, from the think tanks, from the researchers who say, no, this is what you need to be doing when you get to the Capitol. This is the bill that we need on the president's desk. And to let research lead, not radicalism or extremism. Too often we let those who are too extreme pick the policies that we lead with, when the logic, the reason, those who have done the research, they often become on the back burner. Or more than anything, they want to stay out of it. Well, no, I want to bring education and logic to the forefront of our problem solving.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Huey.
Yes. So I mentioned that I feel like I'm pretty unique up here, and just in terms of how much heat I've taken for voting for Obama a long time ago from some friends and some relatives. But throughout my life, I feel like I've been caught in the middle between both sides. Friends on both sides, and a lot of people not understanding each other, and it's worse than it's ever been before in this country. Obviously, social media and all these things play a factor, but kind of coming from where I understand where everyone's coming from, I feel like, yes, we can try to go, make some fiery C-SPAN speeches and whatnot, but most of the work is going to happen behind the scenes. Senator Murkowski, the Republican, in the spring was saying they were all scared. I understand what posturing they have to do, and I know most of the work is going to be in committees and behind closed doors, and I aim to bridge that divide. I feel like James Tallarico has already been doing a great job of trying to speak to the other side and try to explain why our policies would benefit them.
I work across the aisle in Congress the same way that I've done as county attorney, by building interpersonal relationships with folks I can work with. When a large company was trying to expand a landfill more deeply into an African-American neighborhood on the north side of town, I teamed up with a Republican county commissioner. We fought back and we blocked that expansion. When cigarette companies were trying to get our kids hooked on vaping, I teamed up with the Republican Attorney General, who shall not be named, sued the companies, and we got millions and millions of dollars right here from mitigation programs. There are some issues that are just not partisan. Flooding is not partisan. Taking care of our kids should not be partisan. But the other side of that is right now Republicans are trying to eviscerate there being any bipartisanship in Congress. There's a case that went before the United States Supreme Court just this week that will make it so that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act no longer exists, and folks are able to draw black folks completely out of districts across the entire country. I look forward to doing every single thing I can to help pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act to make sure that the Republicans in Congress are the ones that I can work with.
Ms. Montiel.
Thank you. I am in a very good position because as the majority, I'm going to be able to advance any bill or request for the district. Also, I need to work with my fellow Democrats as the city is under control of the Democrats. At the end of the day, we're all Americans. And at the end of the day, we're all people of faith. And we can just have a come to Jesus time and realize that all it matters is the benefit of the people of the district, is to improve the life of all of us and to create future for our children. I know there are many of my fellow Democrats here that I know I can work with. For example, Menifee will be somebody I will be able to work great because we get along quite well. And I will do the same with the rest of the Democrats in the city and county, city of Houston and Harris County. Thank you.
I will work in Congress like I have as a state rep. Let me be clear. I will not lose my democratic fight for the people principles. So if I have to figuratively bust you in the face, I will, like I did in the quorum break, right? But I will tell you that in an overwhelmingly Republican House, I actually got 3 bills to the governor's desk. One was carried by Senator Joan Huffman. She ain't known for criminal justice reform. One was carried by Republican Mays Middleton. And we worked together because I wanted to get actually innocent people out of jail. And that's why Joan Huffman carried that. I had to convince her to do that. And Mays Middleton thought that local civics is important for kids so that we'll have an educated electorate. So as I was creeping over to the Senate, talking to the Republicans, unbeknownst to other people, the Democrats were shocked that I had those 2 Republican senators carrying my bills. I will do the exact same thing. I'll say this one more again. I will bust you in the face if I have to, but I will work behind the scenes with you when I have to as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Edwards? Yes, ma'am.
When I first joined City Council, we had something called a pension crisis on our hands. We had both police workers and municipal workers whose pensions were facing bankruptcy. And that was not an easy issue. And Mayor Turner at the time brought together some of the leaders in a bipartisan coalition so that we could work with the state legislature, so that we could work with our unions, so that we could work with all of the stakeholders who would have to be involved in the shared sacrifice that would allow us to make promises and still keep them for retirees. This is something that required a huge amount of bipartisan collaboration, and I see the opportunity to do the same on the federal level when it comes to the issue of flooding. To date, I have not met a single Republican or a single Democrat that likes to flood. And as a result, that is a space of commonality for our region, unique to this 18th congressional district, that we can come together and address together through infrastructure investment and disaster recovery reform.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Do we realize this is not normal times? We got an idiot in the White House. You know, I think this is one of the biggest things that separates me in this race and why we just had the biggest fundraising quarter in the history of the 18th congressional district. Because Washington, D.C. is not like the county, it's not like the city, it's not like the state, it's Washington. There's Donald Trump in the White House who has literally declared war on the United States of America as we speak. He's doing everything he can to come after every single one of us. So look, I believe that the best bipartisanship is a retirement party for every single Republican member of Congress that's currently there. I will be actively encouraging more states to do exactly what Gavin Newsom is doing, to go and gerrymander Republicans right up out of their seats the same way they tried to do to us right here in Houston, right here in Texas. I'll be actively working to make sure that we can campaign for Democrats because this go along to get along mentality is why we're in this mess, and I'll put an end to that as your congressman.
So we move now to some randomly assigned questions. Each of you will have 2 minutes to respond to these. Speaking of gerrymandering and the like, let's talk about voting rights and redistricting for a while. The new Texas redistricting proposals are viewed by many as weakening the political power of Black and minority voters in District 18. What then, Mr. Foreman, is your position on the proposed map changes, and what actions would you support to protect fair representation?
When I watched all of this redistricting play out, more than anything, I was just really frustrated and disappointed. First and foremost, that the people that we have in charge can't figure out how to get along and get things done correctly. on both sides of the aisle. I was really disappointed with some of the things that happened to us instead of for us. When I say us, I mean the people of the 18th Congressional District. I think it's about time we had a seat at the table instead of just being on the menu when things started getting cut up. So it would be my mission, my passion to make sure that, one, we empower the attorneys of our community to make sure that they can put up the best civil fight in court, and they have the federal, state, local, and people's support to argue whenever there is an infringement upon our rights. So first and foremost, it's about empowerment, making sure that we pull people together. I think about the great Mickey Leland. I think about Thurgood Marshall. They weren't just doing things, they were activating people in their community to make sure they knew that it's not just about me as the elected official. It's about you as the citizen pooling your voice and your resources together to demand action from our elected officials. Now, our mid-century redistricting is really disappointing to see, but that's the position of power in America. This is what it looks like when power reigns, but minority right is also an American issue. So we, the people, have to make sure that those in power understand not to infringe and overstep on our rights and privileges as voters. Now, I think there's also a bit of it that falls onto us as voters. We need to get out and vote, educate ourselves, participate, and make sure that they know, no, we have an active voter base in these communities that we cannot walk over anymore. They're showing up at the polls, they're educating themselves, and they're making demands of us, so we can't just put them on the menu anymore. We must give them a seat at the table.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Huey, Congressional District 18 has a proud legacy of electing strong African-American leaders. Yet, voter turnout, especially among younger and marginalized communities, remains inconsistent. As we look toward preparing for midterms in 2026, what concrete steps would you take to expand voter participation and protect voting rights in District 18, particularly in historically underrepresented neighborhoods like 3rd Ward, Cashmere Gardens, and Acres Homes?
Yeah, so I've talked to precinct chairs throughout the district, and they have a lot of different theories about what happened last year. I mean, there's some hard data you can look at, but honestly, I feel like I know a lot of people I've talked to just feel like they're allergic to politics or they don't understand why it affects them. Why should I care? And you've heard me say already, I'm a big believer in the power of story. I feel like we have to give these people, especially young people, more compelling stories than what we've been doing. Maybe it seems like something boring that the old people watch on TV or something like that. And we have to make sure they understand where things have gone wrong in history, especially when you don't, we just saw a full court press over the redistricting, and they moved fast and it didn't stop it. But for years leading up to this, we've had consolidations of power in our state government. And, people in our district, but also across the state, we need to use those compelling stories to explain why this is dangerous if you don't pay attention to what your leadership is doing and they use power for their own ends. We had hope for the Freedom to Vote Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, but this week, that Supreme Court case, we're not sure what's going to happen. It's very discouraging to me that things might go south with that. Congress can still act after that. But I will say, 25 years ago, when I was at Rice, Dr. Michael Emerson, he's been quoted over some of this recently. He taught the race class, and after that, I tried to explain to people in the 2000s, 2010s, and a lot of people who looked like me did not understand or they didn't believe some of the things that I was trying to explain to them from history in the class. They felt like things were a long time ago, and people walking around today, they didn't realize were affected by all of this. And so honestly, we had to tell compelling stories to the youth in our district, but there's a lot of people, I guess you could say, on the other side that don't understand, and we need to tell them too.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Menifee, let's move on then to public safety and criminal justice. Crime is a frequent topic in candidate debates. What combination of federal, state, and local strategies do you support for reducing violent crime, improving policing reforms, and supporting community-based alternatives, for example, violence intervention programs?
The first thing we have to address is prevention. You take a group of people, you make them build a country for free, you subject them to Jim Crow, redlining, you block them from all forms of wealth building, from education, you lynch them, and then you put them in small neighborhoods you over-police them, you over-prosecute them, you over-convict them, and then they're overcharged ultimately. I think we need to focus on prevention. That means ensuring that our communities, every single one of them, people have the opportunity to get good jobs, that they have mental health treatment, that we're investing on the front end instead of complaining on the back end. But I also believe in true community policing. That means making sure that the officers that are working in a neighborhood live somewhere in or around the neighborhood. That means making sure that we have true mental health funding for violence interrupters, for alternative programs, so that if somebody's having a mental health episode, we're not sending a police officer with a gun to engage in a violent way, and instead we're sending someone to learn about their situation and make sure that both of them make it home safely. But it's also about reentry. Too many times, we send brothers and sisters to prison and then we completely turn our backs on them. Study after study has shown you want someone who coming back into the community to be able to do well and participate in our economy, they need to be able to get a good job. And I made that a pathway in Harris County. When I got elected Harris County attorney, I immediately dove into drafting a ban-the-box policy, because study after study shows that if somebody checks that box, that they've been arrested or charged or convicted of a crime, then their application is balled up and thrown in the trash can. But instead, now what we do at the county is that question is not asked until after a conditional offer of employment is extended. We have to provide folks who have been justice involved an opportunity to get good jobs, because that will help keep them focused, participate in the economy, do well for their family, and not get in trouble again, reoffend, and end up back in the system.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Montiel,
Thank you.
Governor Abbott's, I got a question for you. Yeah. Governor Abbott's recent decision to deploy the Texas National Guard to assist ICE operations in major cities, including parts of Houston, has raised concerns about overreach and community safety. What safeguards or oversight measures would you support to ensure these deployments don't harm residents, particularly communities of color and immigrant families in District 18?
Well, as my slogan say, Houston, we have a problem. We have a problem in infrastructure, and we have a major problem in crime. We ran at the top of crime, and many type of crimes we run number first, like human trafficking. It is a fact that blue cities are failing us in crime protection, and that's why Governor Abbott have to intervene. We know that they're coming to protect us citizens from criminals and not to attack the good citizens of Houston or any city he deploys. We need to be conscious at that time and know that this is to protect us, not to go against us. One of the first things that any of us, when we take office, swear is to protect our citizens. And we need to make sure that our citizens enjoy safety for their life and their properties. And one of the problems, as we've seen also, the open border, we already have a crime problem, but the open border brought criminals that we don't know. So this is an extreme measure, but a measure that is needed and is there to protect us, the good citizens of the city of Houston. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Ms. Jones, let's move on to, to climate, environment, and flooding. District 18 residents are disproportionately impacted by flooding. We've heard much about that tonight. Poor drainage and environmental hazards are likewise challenging in this community, especially in low-income neighborhoods. What federal policies and resources would you fight for to protect District 18 residents from flooding, improve infrastructure, and ensure environmental justice?
So, I would, first of all, take to Washington and understanding that it does flood here, that we don't have sufficient drainage, we don't have sufficient bayous widened. So what I'll do is work with the Army Corps of Engineers to provide expertise and money to widen our bayous. Now, when I was on city council, I did that. We helped to do that on council. I also would work with the EPA and provide sanctions for agencies like TCEQ, that doesn't regulate companies. We need to regulate the oil refineries who are polluting our air and who are polluting the bodies of the people that work there, which is causing problems with our health. And so, as a state rep, I have challenged companies that have polluted the air, like in Sunnyside with the batch plants, on the north side with creosote. I've worked to penalize those companies and try to stop them from getting permits. There used to be a company over here on Griggs that actually was having explosions and killing people. I helped as a city council member to close that company down. So at the federal level, I would work with all the agencies that give all of the state agencies in Texas money and stop funding to those agencies if they don't take care of business locally, because local politics affects us more than federal politics. And I would work with more senior members of Congress, because when you go into Congress, you're like a freshman. And I would work with people who are on appropriations to help get the appropriate money brought here to help regulate the environment, provide money for flooding and infrastructure.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Ms. Edwards, let's continue in that same vein. And in light of significant cuts in funding for the EPA, what role should the federal government play in supporting environmental justice and reducing emissions?
While Houston is home to many great treasures, one of the things that we are also home to is environmental contamination of epic proportions. We have the Fifth Ward Cancer Cluster. We have environmental injustice that takes place all across our community due to the industrial nature of our city. We need to start to provide more funding to monitor these injustices. That is one key way that they get away with a lot of this activity, is that particular monitoring device is not functioning, for example. We need to put the money into place to make sure that's happening. And when there are instances of environmental injustice, that we need to make sure that we prioritize making sure that people are made whole. And when I say made whole, I mean putting them in a position that is equitable, not just devalue them in their home and then giving them the fair market value once it's been devalued. That's not good enough. Houston can be a model for an equitable outcome for the people who are going to need relocation, considering what's happening with the cancer cluster. Houston can be a model when it comes to making sure that the entities that are involved in this cancer cluster are also helping to remediate this issue. These are the things that we can put into place and ensure that this is happening here and now. We need our federal partners, because we know that TCEQ, which is the state regulatory authority, does not prevent environmental contamination. I'm going to repeat that. TCEQ does not do its job. And so we need the EPA to do its job and to stand up for the residents that are not able to stand up for themselves.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Martin, let's ask now this question regarding education and youth opportunity. District 18 is home to major universities and community colleges, but many public schools in the area still struggle with funding and achievement gaps. What is your vision for expanding educational opportunities and youth engagement, both in K-12 schools and in pathways to higher education and workforce readiness for the young people of District 18?
It's an amazing question, but first I got to clear up Republican clueless disinformation. Because I heard a couple minutes ago about this idea that blue states are the originators of crime, but the top 3 states for homicides in this country are red states. Historically, it's been Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi. So maybe if you want to go talk about crime in this country, go deal with the Republicans that Donald Trump endorses. I think we should just be honest and have a real conversation about what the stuff that we're seeing. I cringe when I hear protecting us. I want to know, how is it that Greg Abbott is protecting us by deploying our National Guard to Oregon in the middle of hurricane season? How does that make any sense? we just got to take a step back and say just how insane a lot of the things Republicans say and how so often in our society it goes completely unchallenged. When it comes to the idea about our youth, I think that one of the biggest issues that we have is the insane HISD takeover that's currently destroying our school system as we know it. It's ridiculous. I'll be working immediately with someone by the name of Congresswoman Kathy Castor in Tampa, Florida, who had in her state attorney removed from office because the governor, Ron DeSantis, didn't like her. I don't like that. So I want to stop states from having the ability to remove elected officials just because they can. Because what happened at HISD was a deprivation of our voting rights, and we cannot accept it. In addition to that, I will co-sponsor the Jobs Act from Senator Tim Kaine to allow for Pell Grants to be used for those that are in trades as well. I will also push legislation to ensure that we are fully funding our HBCUs because they have been long defunded. And this defunded Department of Education that we currently see in Washington, D.C. is going and destroying that. I'm also going to go put up legislation for when we put back inside of the House to make sure that we can allow students to go back to grad school again with real federal loan guarantees. It's long overdue because Republicans are defunding everything we see.
Thank you, sir. But I do want to thank each of these candidates for their responses to these questions tonight. We've come to the conclusion of our time of questions and answers. And so I do want to thank you again for making yourselves available to respond to these crucial issues that confront CD18. As we close, let me ask then that you'll make one final statement of 1 minute apiece and give some reflections to each of us who listens tonight so we will know just a bit more about where you stand and what you want us to remember as we leave this place tonight. Beginning with Mr. Foreman.
Well, first I would like to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to come here to this church again. I'm a preacher, so being in the house of the Lord is a place of dear sentiment to me because we get to talk about the goodness of God and the blessing that Christ Jesus offers into our life. So being able to be in a place that's the focus is my #1 greatest honor. Now, I have to sit in the congregation, obviously, and I have to talk political from time to time. So I'm running as an independent because I have to go to church and make sure I don't offend my congregation. And I've done all that I could to make sure that I've optimized life for my people. So when I'm running for Congress in the U.S. Congressional District, I'm doing it first and foremost for the people, to make sure that we have a voice in the highest seat in the office, to make sure that the greatest country on earth is doing the most it can for those who suffer the most and need the most, because you cannot be successful unless those at the bottom have fair opportunity for success just like those at the top. And that's what this is about for me. This is about bringing opportunity to the average American. Thank you.
Mr. Huey.
It's a pleasure to be here, especially in the new building. I first came to the old one 25 years ago when I was at Rice. I want you to know public servants should be accountable. I think everyone here agrees with that, but we live in very strange times where more than ever they're getting away with all kinds of things that are terrible. I thought it was bad enough in the early part of this century when, based on lies, we went to a war in a country that didn't make sense. But as a person of faith, I'm very concerned about the way people are throwing around Christian nationalism ideas. I feel like people are not understanding what Jesus was leading his disciples, what he was teaching them. And I feel like to change the direction, we really have to try to reach all Americans and explain what we're about. We have record unemployment and inflation. I have extensive experience in finance, healthcare, and energy, and I believe in putting forth sensible policies. And to avoid being compromised, I've only taken grassroots donations from people like me and you. I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe the tide couldn't be turned.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Menifee.
I'm going to Congress to get things done for the communities and the people that I love. My family grew up in Fifth Ward. I am from the district. I was raised in the district, and I have seen the issues that face this district. When Ken Paxton came out here and tried to get more than 2,000 legally cast ballots thrown out, I took him to court and I beat him. When our president came out here and tried to cut $20 million in health care programs, I took him to court and I beat him. I have spent my entire career standing up to the powerful on behalf of those who have been made to feel like they're powerless, and that's exactly the type of time that I'm going to be on when I'm in Congress. When I've been the county attorney, I have worked full days, full weeks, full months, and full years. I'm not running to be famous. I'm not running to hang out. I'm running to do a job for the people and the communities that I love. And so what you'll get out of me is a workhorse who is going to fight every single day to take care of the communities that I need to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Montiel.
The fact is that blue cities are failing us, and that's the truth. As you can see, my opponents are offering gridlock, not solutions. They're offering to go to Congress to fight Trump and to fight every Republican step of working together. As you see, my opponents know the problems, know the topics, but mostly created by the Democrats, since this city is being under Democratic control since 1972. It is time for a change because the problems are not getting solved. Is your life better today than from 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago? Do you think that voting for the same people is going to give you a different result? That's the definition of insanity. Let's vote for a change. Vote for Carmen Maria Montiel on November 4th and start changing the city of Houston. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Jones. Yes, please.
I'd like to thank Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for having this. I also want to let you know that Secretary Marsha Fudge is a mentor to me in this race. And what she's helped me to understand, and I already knew this, was that my dad's suicide, my grandmother's leg amputation and ultimate death, city health clinics, abortion access, the murders in my family, the suicides in my family, survivor experiences, voting rights challenges, immigration issues, because I have immigrants in my family, are all personal to me. And so I am running because I know what the constituents of Texas 18 need. And when I get to Congress, I am going to fight like I've never fought before to defeat Donald Trump. I've defeated Donald Trump issues in the Texas legislature, and I will continue to do that. And I will use my 30 years of trial experience to do that, because I was born at 2610 Scott Street. I am from this neighborhood. I will always fight for us. My name is Jolanda Jones.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Edwards.
I was born, raised, and I still live in this 18th congressional district. What happens here is personal to me. And right now, we are in the fight of a lifetime. Never in my lifetime have I seen a president that didn't believe in the rule of law, who fought against health care, education, economic stability, housing, and everything that our communities need. We need someone who can restore confidence in government. 8 years ago, when Harvey hit our community, and I learned that so many of our seniors were not getting the help they needed, we canvassed hundreds of houses, we organized hundreds of volunteers, and I would step foot on those doorsteps. And the first question they'd ask me is, "What are you doing here?" I'd tell them, "I'm your city council member, I'm here to help." And then they'd say, "Well, are you up for re-election?" We have conditioned our community to believe that the only time they have value to us when it's a campaign season. And we have got to get in the business of, instead of over-promising and under-delivering, it's time for us to get in there and do our jobs and deliver real results for our community.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Martin.
I would like to remind Carmen that the Republicans have ran the state of Texas for the last 30 straight years. So in your words, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. Let's talk about the real elephant in the room. We've had a lot of great ideas tonight, and I know that you guys have heard them, but the real problem here is something that nobody else on this stage has talked about: the filibuster. You see, the filibuster is where all good ideas go to die. It is where so many of the bills that have been talked about on this stage can be introduced and marked up, but nothing ever happens with them. We just had a Democratic president who I loved, a Democratic Senate, a Democratic House, so many things we wanted to do, but we could not pass it because of filibuster. I will immediately call on the United States Senate to end the filibuster as we know it, so we can pass voting reform, so we can pass universal health care, so we can pass universal child care, so we can deliver for our district. That's the kind of future that I want to build, and as your next congressman, I humbly ask you for your vote, because we will deliver for the future.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please give your appreciation to each of these who has shared with us tonight in this crucial conversation. Thank you. We are certainly grateful to Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. No.
He named my name. I'm asking for it.
Okay, young ladies and gentlemen, I got it. I've been moderating at Wheeler Avenue for a little while now. I got this, all right? No worries. I got it. Relax, please. Let's maintain order. I got it. We are done. We're done for the night. And so I'm grateful to Delta Sigma Theta again and to our social justice ministry here at Wheeler Avenue and to all those who have partnered to bring tonight's crucial conversations to this space. I'm going to ask Dr. Angela Raven Anderson to return now. She's going to share some reflections with us, and then Ms. Pierre will close us out thereafter. Dr. Anderson, there they are. Yes, ladies, please.
First of all, as we close tonight, let us give our moderator a hand. Thank you, sir. We so appreciate you. Amen. Thank you. Thank you. As we are closing tonight, let us remember that civic engagement is not just about casting a vote. It's about lifting our voices, showing up for our neighbors, and working together for the common good. Democracy works best when we work together. So let's leave this place and stay inspired, stay involved, and stay committed to building the kind of community that reflects the highest values of justice, compassion, and hope. There are a few dates that we want you to be cognizant of as we are coming to the end of this road. Please mark your calendars for October 20th. That is the first day of early voting. October 24th is ballot by mail application deadline, and October 31st is the last day of early voting. And for those who know, Wheeler Avenue is a polling place, so you can come right here on this campus and vote. And of course, November 4th, we need you to show up, not just you, but all of your family, all your cousin-ims, and everybody else on the block. Come to bring out your friends and family and plan to vote.
Thank you so much, Reverend Angela. Along with our esteemed moderator, let's give all of our candidates a round of applause for being here today and pouring into us this evening. And then give yourselves a round of applause. We didn't have to escort anybody out. Y'all look amazing, and you did great. I also want to thank the thousands of viewers that joined us online for this important discussion. You will see a QR code on the screens to my right and left behind me. That is a very important code to scan and then share that link with everybody you love and the ones you don't like so much, because that information is important to prepare you for this upcoming election that Reverend Angela just ran down all the important dates. It also includes a very comprehensive voter guide, okay? And you can print that out and take it with you to the poll. Remember, you can have printed documents with you when you go to the poll. We want you to be inspired, as my colleague has said, but we also want you to be prepared and informed. So on behalf of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated Houston Alumni Chapter, my president, this beautiful church, Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, y'all give it up for this church family. We thank you so much for joining us tonight for making a commitment to be involved in civic engagement, and I know we will see you at the polls. Thank you.
Good night.
Soars. Oh.
Take a picture.